are we going to apply this shape to in our shape memory of aligners? Because we are not using attachments. Very rarely. There are no attachments with shape memory aligners. Very rarely. So what we are doing is, we are taking a tooth from one position, we are going to put it onto the other position. I can dip. The whole crown of the tooth is going to act as an attachment for me. So you pick me up, you put me on this side. You apply a force system, you're going to dip me. Next time I have to apply a force somewhere else. Totally different system. So, if I want to close the space, force driven, that means I have to apply force, and then I have to apply opposite force to create the opposite moment, so that the roots are going to move and the crowns are going to move. And who's going to decide that? A technician who's going to make your alignment treatment. You're not going to decide. Shape driven is going to be that the whole crown is acting as an attachment, and you are going to move the roots and the crown at the same time. That's the shape driven. So for example, if you look at one of our friends created this thing. Let's see if it is there. To give you an example, if it works, if it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay, it's not working. So what is going to happen with shape driven is that if I want to move this root forward, I'm going to make this much thicker aligner with shape memory, and I am going to change in the crown so that the crown is going to stay there, the root is going to come forward, and this is going to provide anchorage for all of it. No attachments. Now what happened? You can see, oh, now it started moving. Okay. So now you take a look at it here. Both clinical examples are class 2. Okay? In one is incisors are in, the other incisors are forward. So for example, if I want to keep the incisor ledge where it is, I have to create a much bigger moment to move the roots back and use a class 2 elastic or something to keep the crowns where they are. What happens if the teeth are flared? Then I have to create an opposite moment to bring the crowns back. So now you can see that we want to apply the same philosophy with aligners. And that becomes very difficult for us. So what are the aligners? I don't know what happened. It's not a problem. So what are the aligner force modulating factors? Well, one is that we're going to do spatial and angular activations, material thickness, type of tooth movement. I'm not going to use attachments. How often you should be changing your aligners. So, let's take a look at some of the literature. The first thing we want to talk about is the forces. Very few studies have been done on forces as far as the thermoform aligners. Why? Because it is rather difficult to measure force. You can measure force on a single tooth, maybe with transducers and all that, but most of the studies are in vitro type of studies. So this is one of the studies which came out, and take a look at it. Premolar derotation initial force is 800 grams millimeters. Force values are very, very high, this type of study. This is another one, also from Germany, forces and moments delivered by PETG aligners on upper incisors. So take a look at this. The mean force delivered for 0.5 millimeter aligners for 0.25 millimeter of palatal displacement of tooth. 21 were 3.1, 5.31, 3.69. So you can see that the thinnest aligners, and we will see the amount of force they are delivering are going to be much, much higher. and the force dissipation is going to be much, much faster. This is one of my favorite studies, came out in Korean Journal of Orthodontics. Very nice study which was done. Take a look at these numbers. For example, this is movement of 5 sets of lingual movement of the central incisor. Okay, maxillary central incisor. This upper jaw line shows the thickness of how much thickness, 0.3 millimeters, 0.4, 0.5, variable. So for example, we are going to use 0.3 millimeters of activation. If you use this activation, you start with a force of about 890 grams. What happens to this force? In 7 hours, it is 490. It's lost. Why did it lose? The thermoform aligner doesn't fit in, it hangs down. And the company says, here's the squeezy, and tell the patient to bite on it. What it does, it distorts the. So the force dissipation is not because of the tooth movement, it is because you have distorted the aligner, thermoform aligner. And in 7 days, it becomes 230 grams, 2.3 Newton, and then you give another aligner, it starts again with 800 or 900 grams. So the amount of force you are using is a lot of force. We don't need that kind of force in orthodontics. So what we say, plastic deformation of 83% in 1 week. These are the studies in the literature. I have nothing against Invisalign, because without Invisalign you would not be standing and talking about it. But what we are saying is that the company's emphasis has been totally different over the years. They didn't change the material. Material basically remained the same. How much force we need to move teeth? This comes from UConn, University of Connecticut Studies. Intrusion, we need only 30 to 50 grams of force. That's it, for 4 incisors. Retraction of 3 to 3, just 250 to 400 grams. What are we talking about here? To move 1 incisor, we are starting with 900 grams of force, which is going to go away completely in 1 week. I can start with this force to retract the anterior teeth and not activate it again over the next 4 to 5 months. Because teeth are going to, once teeth have started moving, they will move with 300, 250, 200. It's just like you are running and you slow down, but you're still running. Same thing with this force system. Once the biologic reaction has started, you continue to move with even lighter force system. This is another of my favorite studies. And this is the study where they talked about that what happens when you apply these different attachments. So one of the things that they talked about here is that with thermoform aligners, the force is such that without attachments, you're going to have a lot of problems. So this is one of the studies where they talked about, and this is the most important result came out of that study. When you apply a squeezy, you will see that it opens up at the level of the gingival margins, and where do you need most of the force to go? At the gingival margin, because you are closer to the center of resistance. All the force is being felt by right here, far away from center of resistance. So the force system is wrong. Squeezies have no role with shape memory aligners. It is an industry by itself. People have made millions of dollars trying to sell you all kinds of colored squeezies and everything. Stupidity in orthodontics, I call it. The point of force application is very important. Where are you going to put your attachments? Closer to the center of resistance, you're going to have a better control on the teeth. Unless you want to move teeth in a certain different way. So it becomes very important. This study also came out in 22. How about the inclinations of the teeth? When we talk about intrusion of teeth, we always mention that the line of force distance from the center of resistance is going to determine whether teeth are going to flare, intrude, or they're going to pull. What happens with squeezy? When you put the squeezy, you are always putting the force in the anterior direction. So you have a problem with that. And then this study came out from China, because these days I was going to China quite a bit. I went probably 20 different universities. And this is a very nice study, came from Shanghai, because they talked about what happens with these aligners based on IMPA. These squeezies, and if you don't look at the force system, flared incisors will keep on flaring more and more and more. So long axes of the teeth become very important. These are the problems. This is also a study, and I am only showing you the latest studies from Progress in Orthodontics, one of my journals. Was my journal. So it talks about biomechanical analysis. This is also comes from Shanghai. So there are some interesting studies. For example, they looked at intrusion, that how you can improve the intrusion of the teeth with aligners. These studies are not coming from Orgo or Invisalign or any of the companies. These are coming from the universities. This is very interesting. There was a very nice paper written by my friend Frederick Fleming from Dublin. He said orthodontic companies introduce a product, they never investigate. Universities end up doing the studies, and by the time the results come in, companies have made billions of dollars, and the product may be not good. You all remember XUฬิT? Vibration was going to move the teeth faster. The companies gone. But the people who designed the plants, they became rich over the 6 years. Because a lot of studies came out, it's a pure garbage. Same thing is propeller, making holes in the bone. It's going to move faster. For what, for 3 days, 2 days? You don't care about it. So we end up doing these studies. You will see that, you can see this is another study. It talks about what happens with inclinations of the teeth. So, universities, biomechanics, we are trying to improve, but we cannot improve ourselves if the companies don't follow us. And this is one of the reasons we go into these shape memory aligners. So the next thing comes in is that since we have all these problems, what is the efficacy of thermoformed aligners? Well, this is a study which came out in 2009, which talked about that there is accuracy of movement was only 41%. But Invisalign was the only one in doing aligners, so that's why it's Invisalign. It could be any other company. So that means 50+% of the patients could not get the tooth movement you were looking for. They came back and they did another study in 2020. They said, has Invisalign improved? Well, it improved 9%. So half of the time you are not getting the tooth movement what you are looking for. And then we have had several articles which have come in. They're talking about the torquing of the teeth, they're talking about the retraction of the teeth, and they all basically talk about anywhere from 40 to 50% of overall efficacy of different types of tooth movements. This is a paper written by two of my students, Biomechanics of Clear Aligners, and this came in WFO journal. And what they did was they looked at all the studies which have been done, and they created a chart, something like this. So it talks about, at the bottom you can see that when you are tipping the teeth, 80% of the time, the studies report you get what you want. But look at the root movement, torquing, less than 8%. So the recent studies are saying that most of the time when people, thermoform speakers talk about, I did torquing, all they did is they brought the crown forward and moved the root back. They didn't keep the crown where it is and moving the root back. So you will see translation only 20%. It's terrible, but we all accept it. Why do we accept it? Because 50% of our patients, even if you want to do something wrong, you will not do it. You cannot do it because these are simple cases. It is the problem comes in with the other 50% of the patients we treat in our practices. Occlusal planes are changed, teeth are leaning on one side, class 2 on one side, class 2 on the other, class 2 patient, deep bite, open bite. These are the patients. The efficacy becomes very, very poor. This is a study which came out which talks about comparative analysis design versus achieved maxillary teeth. What do you get? Significant deviations between design and achieved maxillary and crown root movements. They're superimposed. Buccolingual and distal lingual angular deviations. And they recommended individual biomechanics plan for each patient. But how do you do that? Because you are sending it to a company. So when you do shape memory aligners, you are doing the treatment plan. You can, even if you want, you can do the software movements yourself. Or you can tell someone what type of movements you're looking for. You are not going to get 60 aligners at the same time. You can do 10, 15, 20, do it again, scan, make your own aligners. It takes 1 hour to make these aligners in your practice. Take a look at this one. How about the periodontal health? If you have adult patients, bone loss is there. You can't use thermoform aligners very well because you can't use the squeezy in these patients to apply force on those teeth and move them in a different direction. So linear movements are based on periodontal health, so you have to be very, very careful when you are going to do any distalization type of tooth movement. Nobody talks about biology of tooth movement with aligners, and I'm a biologist. All my life we have written many, many papers on different types of tooth movements with different wires. What happens? There was a time we only talked about right hand, you apply force, teeth will bone will be compressed and it's stretched on the other side. That's all we finished. But these days we go deeper. We want to know how the different cytokines are going to work. Because if I'm going to apply a force, the bone has to resorb first before the apposition can take place on the other side. So somehow the resorption becomes very important. So over the years we have been studying OPG, rankle, interleukins, that what is going on, how we can accelerate these cytokines so we can move these a little bit faster. Or even normally, so we don't go in the wrong direction in our patients. Take a look at this one. This is a very nice, if you can see the amount of force on the left side, 3 days, 7 days, 14 days. 3 centinewton PDL, very nice, looks very nice. 10 centinewton, you can see some resorption is taking place on this bone. 25, the cells are gone. 50 newtons, centinewtons, cells are completely gone. So how much force do we need to move teeth? 20 grams, 30 grams, not 800 grams. So what is going to happen? Something like this. Undermining resorption. Teeth don't move very fast. They may move in the wrong direction for you. We believe in lighter forces. Light, sustainable force. So shape memory aligners are going to give us that, the biologic force system. So, the next thing we want to see is strains on the PDL, alveolar bone, and alveolar bone associated with orthodontic tooth movement. Now we want to know what is going on with the bone and PDL. Suddenly we are interested in it. I've been talking about this for the last 5 or 6 years, about aligners. And now you can see these studies are coming out. Different people are looking at what is going on. This is another from my friend Thomas Castroflorio, who's co-author with my books. Biochemical markers of bone metabolism during early orthodontic tooth movement with aligners. Nobody talked about this subject before. Suddenly we want to know what is going on with the cells, what is going on with the bone. Now they are talking about when you apply a force, what is going to happen? You apply a force, the tooth goes against the bone. Then nothing happens. Latent period. And after 3 or 4 weeks, suddenly tooth will start moving. So what does that mean for us? When we give aligners to the patients, I don't tell them that I'm going to increase bone activation every time. All you need is first activation, next 2 weeks, you don't activate because teeth are not going to move. Bone biology hasn't set in. And after 4 weeks, your teeth will start moving. So what do the companies do? Every time you give a liner, 0.25, 0.25, by the time you reach 4th week, you're already behind. Teeth haven't moved, you kept on activating. And the plastic gets deformed. The teeth are not moving. It's very important that we have to understand biology of tooth movement. Take a look at this, the microbiome alterations of supragingival plaque among adolescents using clear aligners. Now we are talking about microbiome. What is going on with children? Because children are not brushing as good as we would like them to. And they are using aligners. They eat, they put aligners back sometimes in the mouth. How that hygiene is going to affect the amount of tooth movement. They talk about caries development in these children who are not going to clean their teeth very well with the aligners. There were no studies before this. Nobody talked about it. So what we are doing here is trying to make you aware. I'm not saying change everything what you do, but I'm saying what you do, you got to be very careful. And they will look at how you can change into different. Changing is very difficult in the world, you know. When iPhone came in, I did not use it for first 4 years because I loved my BlackBerry. Nobody talks about BlackBerry anymore. This is what we call disruptive technology, completely disruptive. And this is what shape memory aligners are. That you are in control yourself of moving teeth, how many aligners you want to give, how do you want to scan, and light force, which is going to remain active over a long period of time. So we have force-driven model for automated clear aligner staging based on stepwise tooth. This is one of the nicest articles, very difficult to read, I have read recently. Very nice article. Because this article is basically talking about that how the force is generated by aligners. Force is not generated because the tooth is back and you are pulling it forward. Force is generated by adjacent teeth which are not going to move so that your tooth can move forward. Becomes very important. And what this study talks about is that it is very, very important that how technicians are going to develop aligners based on your treatment plan. And it talks about that why aligners don't work also because of the material and because of what the technicians are going to do. Attachments, as I talked with you, this is just a gimmick, okay? It's a total gimmick. So take a look at this. even if you're going to use these different attachments, you gotta know where to locate these attachments. So you can see that if I put attachment on the left side of the incisor edge, and if I put it on the right side, the distance from the center of resistance increases or decreases, the amount of moment is going to be different. Teeth going to move differently. How would be the shape-driven system would be? Shape-driven would be that I will take the whole crown, put it in new position, and my shape memory aligner has characteristic like a nickel titanium wire. Because it is going to become active in the mouth in 1 hour, 100% of activation. And then you will see the tooth is going to move just like nickel titanium wire. Light force, shape. It is going to adapt the shape of the alteration you have made in the aligner. Okay? So this is how we are going to be using it. Take a look at it, the distance. Where do you put attachments? It's going to be very different. So why teeth don't move properly? Because somebody else is doing it. You're not doing it yourself. So, now question comes in is how big the attachment should be. Geometry, location, size, function. We don't use attachments, but I'm talking about attachments. If you're going to use attachments, how you should be using them. Those baby attachments are no good. Same way, the brackets. Somebody comes to you and says, oh doctor, I have a little mini bracket, beautiful bracket, please buy it. Stupid, because small bracket means I cannot create moments. You need a bigger bracket so I can create moments. So you can see, the larger the size, that doesn't look very nice. So I can now create bigger moments. Smaller, I cannot create moments. Very important, same principles, it's not different. Take a look at this, like a little beam theory, okay? So now I want to show you why the shape is very important of the attachments. If I apply a force equal distance from the center of the attachment, you will see that my tooth is going to go in circle. But I can also apply force from any point on there, even from the side. So that means I don't need 2 attachments, 1 attachment, beveled. I don't need all this. Tooth has no idea, PDL has no idea that how you are applying force. It just is that this force is being fed in a certain way. So we did this study we published in Angle Orthodontist with Dr. Kawamura. He was the primary person who did the research. I just provided the ideas to him. And what he came up with was, you take the aligner and you are putting it on all the teeth, and you are putting force system on the attachments, and you are hoping that adjacent to other teeth are not going to move as much. But what we found out was that if you use this type of attachment proposed by Invisalign, or you use this type of attachment, there is no difference, none whatsoever, in the type of tooth movement you are going to get. Same. There's no difference. I can take my attachment, I can angulate it anywhere, all clockwise, counterclockwise, apply force from top, bottom, anywhere. Same force system. So, attachments. One study basically said that 3mm vertical attachment showed greater mesiodistal translation of the first molars. You can see all these studies are coming out now. Horizontal attachment yielded higher stress at the root apex. So this is what we call evidence-based research. People are following the studies coming out. So again, it doesn't make a difference if I apply a force on a single attachment or if I apply a force on 2 attachments. It doesn't make a difference, as long as I can create the same moments. So all these studies you can see are now talking about attachments. Now, how long you should use aligners in the mouth? Well, most of the studies are showing that 7-day protocol is good. But again, you have to change the protocol based on what type of tooth movement you are going to do. You cannot be blinded by that. For example, if I'm going to use toning, I may need the same amount of activation for 3 different aligners, for 3 weeks, without increasing the amount of force or moment. And that creates problems if you keep on adding changes. Because teeth are not moving the way you want them to move, or the way a technician wants them to move. This is another study which came out which says, moreover, vertical rectangular attachments of canines are beneficial for achieving predictable tooth movements over optimized canine attachments. Simple attachments are much nicer. Again, another paper talking about vertical. So attachments we use only for retention if we want to. If you're going to use class 2 elastics, you need one attachment on each side so that you don't dislodge. So how do we improve the efficacy of orthodontic treatment with clear aligners? On the left side, I don't know why it's changing the color, but as long as we can read it, you can see I've written all the 4 things: efficacy of tooth movement. And on the right side is the most important thing: material, thermoform. We need elasticity we need constant thickness versus variable. We want variable thickness within the aligner, just like rectangular wires in the posterior region, lighter wires in the anterior. Resiliency, we need viscoelasticity, stress relaxation, resistance to deformation, thermal properties, optical properties, antimicrobial, all sorts of things we need. So what are the aligner materials doing for us? Most of the aligner materials we use at this time, thermoplastic, are basically polyethylene, terephthalate, or variations of it. And shape memory aligners are graphies, which are basically at this time TA28. We used to have TC85, now we have TA28, because there's a constant research going on to improve the material so we have better force system with us. This is a very nice study which came out because 2013 Invisalign changed single layer to smart track because they said force system is much better. The study came out in AJODO, which basically said there was not much difference between the two. So what are the different aligner materials we are using? Take a look at it. All these companies are producing what we call thermoform aligners. Thermoform. Different companies are making it. Okay? These are all thermoform aligners. Zendura, Essex, and these studies basically talk about what is the impact strength, which one is better, which one is not good, and you can see the different studies on the material. But we are not interested in these. We are interested more in a material which is not going to distort. We are going to have shape memory characteristics for us. So this is a very nice study came out seeking orderless out of orderless movements and update review of biomechanics in clinical aligners. This is what I'm talking about. There's no order. It's orderless completely. And all kinds of studies are there. And you can see this talks about mechanical characteristics. You can see TC85, graphene, sole Korea, crosslink with method. What the different properties are. So what we are basically looking at are the tooth movements, for example. So if you, for example, I'm going to talk totally different here. If you take for example, put a dent in your aligner, you can see a line that doesn't fit the tooth in the anterior region completely. Same thing, if you put an attachment, same thing is going to happen, it doesn't fit in completely. And this is why you cannot get shape memory aligner system, shape memory type of. Number one, plastic is not very good. So what revolutionized orthodontics in 1980s, and I was part of it, because we developed beta titanium, copper nitride, Chinese nitride, all wires were developed at University of Connecticut. This is what interested me about shape memory aligners. I said, aha, now there is something which is just like going to be back to 1980s. And on top of that, 3D, I can make this thing in my own office. So why shape memory aligners? Number one, improved material, shape memory properties, 3D in-house, light sustainable force, fewer or no attachments. And there are about 30 different evidence-based studies. Dr. Ki-Boon Kim is going to talk after me, and he's going to talk about his studies, what they have done in their department and all over the world. And you are taking control of the treatment, not somebody sitting in a lab. So my job is here not to talk about how you're going to do it, but take a look at it. You're going to do a scan, treatment plan, 3D printer, and then goes into centrifuge, post-curing, ready. The total is going to be about 1 hour. Take a look at this, direct printed. 25 minutes is printing process, 6 minutes is centrifuge, 25 minutes is polymerization, 2 minutes quality check, delivered to the patient. Okay? You can make 8 to 9 aligners at a time. And you can see that there are a lot of studies on this subject. When Invisalign came out in 1979-80, there was not a single study, not a single finished patient. Do you know that? No patient, finished patient they had, and they started selling it. And we adopted it. Are we stupid or what? Just think of it. At that time, we took everything, what they told us. Even now, we just give it a glass and you drink it, you know. It's crazy. So take a look at it. We have at least 3 papers on how long polymerization should be with 3D aligners. We have studies on toxicity, because cytotoxicity, without that you cannot get FDA approval. And this is a paper came out with Dr. Iliadis from University of Zurich. So what are we basically doing? We are putting a resin in a tray in the 3D, and this plate is going to come in, and we are going to have this lighting, and then you will see within about 30 minutes you're going to have aligners ready. They'll be yellowish. They go through the centrifuge to take all the resin out, and then polymerization, 5 minutes with oxygen is taken out, 20 minutes with nitrogen. Done. So clinical utility of shape memory aligners. If you take a look at it, remember this thing? Those of you who were there, we used to show this, impress everybody at the meetings. Take a nickel titanium wire, put it in the hot water, everything goes back to the shape. Take a look at same thing. You can take a liner from the room temperature, you put it in hot water, lukewarm water, soft, make it into this, put it back in the water, goes back to original shape. So what do? Patient comes in, we tell the patient, just open the hot water, put the liner in there, it becomes soft, adapt it in the mouth, you're done. It becomes active within, 100% active within 1 hour. So, I'm going to read this for you. These are super elastic shape memory polymers. They are smart materials, and they are able to modify, take a look at it, size, shape, stiffness, and strain in response to heat, electric, magnetic field, water or light. Just like nickel titanium smart wires. Take a look at this example. See amount of crowding in there. So what is going to happen? What you do is you take your aligner from the room temperature, it doesn't fit in. This is shape memory aligner. Now I'm going to take it and put it in lukewarm water. If boiling water, hot water becomes very soft. If it is just lukewarm water, it becomes very soft either. Also, very easy. You take it, you can see, now you can bend it, you adapt it, no more squeezy needed, fits completely. And as soon as you put it in the mouth, with the mouth temperature, it will become active and start moving the teeth at the same time. So this becomes extremely important. So there are many papers on biocompatibility. I think about there are 4 or 5 papers talk about biocompatibility. And it also talks about that how you have to follow manufacturers' recommendations. So this is also a latest paper which basically came out. Thermomechanical properties. You can see this paper came out in scientific reports. It basically talks about that if you take a thermoform in the lower line, you bend it, it remains in the mouth in the same position. But if you take a aligner, shape memory, you can see that it will go back to horizontal position. So if your teeth were this, teeth is going to move along with deactivation. Stress relaxation. So stress relaxation is extremely important. All thermoform polymers lose stress with fast speed, multi-layer materials relatively lower. And you can see ours, most of the studies which were done on DC-85, and you can see that there is a weaker reaction between intermolecular, like PETG, and what you are going to see is that the recovery is going to be much, much better. You can see there on the top, thermoform aligners, when you apply stress, you can see the shape never changes back to its original. 3D printed aligners, stress, deformation, remove the stress, everything goes back. What does that mean? That means that if you do 0.25 millimeters of activation in your aligner and you put it in the mouth, in 7 days, teeth should move 0.25. You take the aligner out and you will see that whatever changes you did in the aligner are still there. It's just like nickel titanium wire. They deform in the mouth, you take it out, they go back to its original shape. Very important. This is a paper came out on physiochemical and mechanical properties of orthodontic 3D printed aligners. Why I'm showing you this? I'm showing you that any question you have about shape memory aligners is in the literature. All appeared within the last 4 years. Every little thing you can think of. Dr. Kim Kim is going to talk about this study because they have done some excellent work at St. Louis University. And it talks about on the left side, you can see conventional aligner. You have optical range, stress range. You will see 1 to 2 weeks, it goes back, it deactivates, stays where it is, and you will see shape memory aligners, it goes back to its original shape. This is another short-term loading force, immediate placing. What happens with elastic modulus? I'm just going to show you this. I think he's going to talk these studies more in detail about how much force difference is there. Take a look at it, you know. Here you have 15 newtons versus 1.5. The force values are very little. You know, I gave this, my wife was under treatment with Invisalign, and halfway I changed her to graphene aligner. You know what was her first reaction? It's not working. So why? I don't feel the force. You're not supposed to feel the force. That's what the biologic force is all about. Orthodontics would not be a good profession if suddenly patients keep coming to you, so, oh, my mouth is sore because you put the wires connected. We apply lighter forces. We are going lighter and lighter and lighter forces. These are all studies from Dr. Ki Boon Kim's department, and I think he's going to talk in detail about these. But I just wanted to show you that look at the amount of work which is being done in this area. Effect of aging. What happens after 7 days compared to thermoform aligners, or with just the thermoform aligners? What is going on? Shows you type of research which is going on with individual tooth movements. In-house 3D printed aligners, effect of in vivo aging on mechanical properties. The mechanical properties of the tested in-house 3D printed aligners were not affected even after 1 week of wearing period. So I'm not saying something just to impress you. These are all evidence-based studies. I never talk anything if it is not in the literature or we have not studied ourselves or without. This also talks about accuracy between direct printed and thermoformed aligners. Also comes from Dr. Kim's office. This also talks about uniform thickness. So when you take it, for example, a thermoform sheet and you press it, for example, on a model, what is going to happen? Some areas it is going to be thicker, some areas it is going to be thinner. The nice thing about our shape memory aligners is that uniform thickness is going to be all around. It's very, very important how you will move the teeth. We can, with our planning during software phase, we can thicken one tooth, thin another one. We can even have single tooth, certain areas thin, if you want to rotate the teeth, or thicker material. You can do all these things. I'll show you some other pictures as we go along. This is very important, gingival margins. Most of the aligners you see are basically the scallop margins. We may use scallop margin for first 3, 4, 5 aligners, but we would say that if you go a couple of millimeters above the gingival margins, you have a better control on the crown, because your crown is your attachment. You have better control. So, I'm not saying this thing. These are the studies. Take a look at it. This came in AJODL. Biochemical effects of clear aligners with different thickness and gingival margin morphology. So this is a paper which came out in AJODL. And it is from China. And it talks about crowding. You can see pre, post, superimposition, 16 aligners, how the changes took place in different. Very quickly going on, just to show you various thickness of aligners in my printing, in my software. I can make occlusal platforms. I can make sleep apnea devices. I can make devices for sports. I can make devices for mandibular advancement. I can do all sorts of things with our 3D printing. They are ready within 1 hour in your practice. Also, this is a very nice study from Dr. Kim's department of what happens by increasing or decreasing the thickness of the aligners. Another study on accuracy came in Korean journal. And this is basically showing you that how the research is going on for the future. So you can see these days we are looking at that how we can improve the products even a little bit more. Because we think the answer to efficacy of orthodontic tooth movement is with the materials. So software and staging becomes very important, which we are not going to talk. I think later in the afternoon at about 2:30 there's going to be a demonstration. for about a couple of hours about how the system is being used. This is the study I was talking with you about. I'm going to go back. If you get a chance, please read this thing, Bioengineering, that force-driven model for automated clear aligner staging design based on stepwise displacement and rotation. Tells you exactly how the teeth should be moved. Very, very good paper for us. This is coming from one of the articles we published with Dr. Vao-Wioc in the group in AJODO. Talks about aligner staging, how much tooth movement you want to do. Now, these numbers are all constantly changing because one of the nice things about shape memory material is that you can do bigger tooth movements. You can do 0.3, 0.4, but that doesn't mean teeth are going to move that fast. It means that you may not change the activation for two different aligners. So in other words, you can do treatment planning a little bit faster and the tooth movement is going to be a little bit more controlled for you. But you can see we can do all sorts of changes with our... How often we should change aligners? You can see that I put this thing together because it depends that if you are, for example, if you are torquing the teeth, you want at least 14 days. That means don't use the same aligner 14 days, but don't change the activation every week. And I wrote in haha, because maybe you need 3 weeks, maybe you need 4. Because these are the things we are studying now, because we don't know answers to each and everything. This is a paper came out from Dr. Shuk in his journal, Shape Memory Aligners, a New Dimension in Clinical Orthodontics. This is a paper we did in JCO. I just want to introduce you. If you want to read it, you can. This is about in-house 3D printed shape memory aligners for retreatment of fixed aligner failures. And this is a paper we did in JCO again, direct printed aligners with Dr. Ludwig and Giojima. So you can see we are publishing at this time. We are in the beginning phases, but at the same time, Dr. Ojima is doing about 4,000 to 5,000 aligners a month in his practice, 3 practices. This is another one from right from Vietnam, my friend Vao. Class 2 correction and crowding treatment using in-house direct printed aligners. So there are about 25, 30 different. This is another paper, accelerated, and this is the paper we published in the American Journal of Orthodontics. And you can see this is beyond Ludwig, Dick Pendis, who took over as editor-in-chief from me as Progress. And you can see Patrick Fleming, all big names. They're studying. And we are talking about what are the issues, what are the problems you may face, what is the best thing you're going to see. So all these papers are coming out. And this is another one which came out recently in 3D printed aligners, scoping review. So, for example, just to give you an example, we published this in JCO. A simple example, 3 to 3 fixed aligners, fixed retainers are sometimes giving a lot of problems, because people are using these twisted wires, and these wires start untwisting, and the patient says, "Oh, I'll see orthodontist, I'll see orthodontist." And then by the time they come to us, we say, "Oh my God, what happened?" So take a look at this case, Take a look at the root. Take a look at the root of the canine. It's almost poking out on the lingual side. These are, just to give you an example, what is going on. Take a look at panoramic film, what is going on in here. You can see the root is all the way inside. Just to show you a very simple example of what is going on with our aligners. Take a look at here. Lateral incisor. You got to move lateral incisor, we got 2 different directions. So, there we are in our patient. And you can see that we did this, I think, in 24 aligners. And you can, and now the patient is ready to go to a periodontist. They can go in and do a gingival graft. and this was published in GCO. So these days, I recommend usually these braided wires on a spool for 3 to 3 retainers in patients. So these wires are not really active. A lot of times you can see the difference. Now you can see the root completely. A little bit of blunting of the root of the lateral incisor. So just to give you an example, and this just to show you using infrazygomatic tags. I use quite a bit of these tags with aligners, and you can do a lot of movement. So I always say that don't do acrobatic tooth movement. People, if you listen to major or aligner companies, thermoform companies, they are going to say, oh, I close the space, bringing the teeth back over 60, 70, 80 aligners. I always say use tags. Use buccal shelf tags. You can use palatal tags. I see my friend Benedict Loomis is going to talk tomorrow about palatal tags. I've worked with him over the years. And you can use palatal tags with aligners. You can use infrazygomatic. You can use Shunji Sugawara, who's sitting in the front, his SAS system. So you have to incorporate all the things which can accelerate the orthodontic tooth movement in your patient. So just to give you an example, I am going to use tags whenever I can. No use spending a lot of time with aligners to move teeth. Tags with aligners are going to work much, much better for you. And then you can finish it out these patients very nicely. So, just to show you another case of open bite, I personally don't like cephalometric films to talk about airway and all that, so I'm going to move fast. You can see open bite cases. You can make these attachments, this kind of bumpers with the aligners, tongue bumper. So you can do all sorts of appliances. You know, I just put some of these together, so just to show you that what your software can do for you. This is, my end is coming, and this comes from a article by Dr. Bijul and a group of people, including my friend Bjorn Ludwig. And what they talk about is that if you have, let's say, 4 million patients undergoing thermoform aligners, that means you have probably 400 to 300 million models going into the environment. So environmentally, these thermoform models, we don't need them. We need 3D. Most of these big companies eventually will go to 3D because that is the future for us in orthodontics. So why shape memory aligners? Because you want shape memory effect, you want sustained adding or subtracting material, biologic forces, force constancy, larger movements, fewer attachments in your patients. And you can see here we have a new book coming out, and you will see my 2 co-authors, Francesco Garino and Castro Florio from Italy. And you can see in this one we talk about all sorts of aligners, and you will see some of my books. This was another book we did, and we are going to be doing a 2nd edition of this book also, because this is an ever-changing field in orthodontics. So I think my time is almost finished, and I see Dr. You're going to stop me, right? No, I can see that. So let me summarize it. So what I'm basically saying here is, if you're using thermoform aligners, use them intelligently. Use them, one of the things Burstone always taught, and I learned from him, and that is that there are 2 ways of doing orthodontics. One is you have side effects and you don't know you have side effects. That is disaster. And the second one is that you have side effects and you know you have side effects. That means you have the ability to fix the problem as you go along. It is your choice. The other one is blindness, you don't know. So I teach always how you can improve your thermoform and how you can move into something new, which is a disruptive technology. So with this, I want to thank for giving me this opportunity to stand here and talk to all of you. And I don't know if there's a Q&A here or not. Okay, there's no question and answer, so I have answered all your questions. Okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda, for an excellent talk. Wide-ranging, and even though I followed your career in these talks for my 30 years, I can see the progress in the future is going to be ever exceedingly rapid. So thank you very much. We're all back here, please, at 10:30.